Hello and welcome to the Autistic Witch. My name is Claire and I am an autistic witch, and I make these videos for anyone interested in witchcraft and all things witchy. I'm also neurodivergent and I like to share my thoughts and experiences to help anyone else who might identify with that and share that connection. Okay, so today I'm wearing my new glasses, and I really have got to the stage where I need some reading glasses, and they feel quite strange still. But also I'm aware that the light's reflecting off them quite a lot, so I'm hoping that that's not going to be too distracting and too bad. Anyway, today's episode, I thought I'd share about intuition and some of the experiences that I've had when beginning to trust and open up to my own intuition. At the moment, it's coming up to Valentine's Day, and this is always a tricky time for me, being alone, and it's one of those reminders really that the world is set up for two people. And when you go and stay in a hotel, for example, it's always designed for two people, and I feel it does leave you feeling a little bit inferior sometimes. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because I also feel that perhaps it is as a result of my autism that that I struggle to make deeper connections with people, and I think because I perceive the world differently, it's harder to connect with people. But the strange thing is, as soon as I talk to another neurodiverse person, they seem to understand me. It's almost like we talk the same language, and it's a little bit like you've got Apple with their sort of iPads, and then you've got like Android system, and the two work well independently, but when you try to merge something together, they don't work very well. They don't seem to be very compatible, and I kind of see myself as a bit like I'm like the Apple mode and maybe neurotypical people are more the Android mode. I don't know, and something like that I think is going on, where they perhaps just don't quite mesh together very well. Anyway, I thought I'd share that little insight, and maybe this is why I struggle with relationships, and maybe this is why, because it's almost like I have one operating system and other people sort of have another who are maybe neurotypical, and this is why we struggle to connect any deeper. Anyway, back to intuition and what I want to talk about today. So I wish to share with you some examples of experiences that I've had in my life where sadly I've not followed my intuition, particularly when I was younger. And quite some time ago, I made a promise to myself that I would not allow myself to follow my ego again, and that I would really take notice and start to listen to my intuition. And this sometimes has meant making really big life decisions, and really big life decisions such as moving house or choosing a job. One of the memories that I wish to share with you happened almost 20 years ago now. This is where I accepted a job when I had spent really many months out of work, and I felt really pushed into accepting this role because I'd struggled to get a new job. So I I suppose I felt pressured. Now, perhaps if you're a neurotypical person, your experience might be different. You may have only been out of work for a few weeks. But for me, it wasn't unusual to have been out of work for 7, 8, even 9 months, and to have been through what felt like hundreds of different job interviews. So, there had been, it's quite soul destroying, and I had felt this huge pressure to accept this role. But everything felt wrong, and when I look back, I remember before I even went to the job interview, I remember being at the train station waiting to catch a train to go to this job interview. And even at that point, I was thinking, oh, don't get on that train. Just don't get on the train. Tell them you missed it. Do something else. But, back then I didn't listen, and I got on the train and I went to the job interview. And I remember masking really heavily at that job interview and performing, basically. So I put on this performance, which must have been flipping Oscar winning, because they offered me the job, of course. But the reality is they offered me the job when I wasn't being my true self, when I was masking, performing, doing and saying what I thought they wanted to hear. And it felt really awkward. Anyway, it was really one of those situations where I felt I had no choice, but my ego kept going, no, you need the money, you should accept this job, what are you going to say to them, and kind of shaming me almost into making sure that I took this job. But it's funny, because I remember even a week before I started the role, I had this really strong feeling. It was really quite nauseating, it was really sort of, my body was in knots, and I just did not want to go. Everything inside of me was screaming, no, don't do it. And yet off I went. And the whole thing just unraveled. And 8 months later, I found myself facing tribunal paperwork. It was emotionally and mentally crushing. And it was actually a long road to recovery, really, to where I felt I had any real self-worth again. Because, it was very damaging what happened to me. And I promised myself never again would I put myself in that situation. And I have experienced those feelings since, and I have been brave enough to say no to a job offer when I've had those strong feelings. But I just reflect and I think, why did it have to take such a soul destroying experience before I flipping listened? Why did I have to go through all that pain and trauma? Because believe me, going through a tribunal is extremely traumatic. Back then, I didn't have my autism diagnosis, so I didn't fully understand what was happening. And it was just awful, and I wouldn't take it lightly. It takes a lot of courage to be brave enough to stand up to an employer, especially when they're intimidating, bullying you, accusing you of lying, twisting all the facts, all the mudslinging and character assassination that took place with that whole process was just horrendous. And, I never wish to repeat that again. What I also realised is that any money or compensation that's offered really, unfortunately, doesn't match the amount of emotional damage and trauma that had happened. I don't think it's the equivalent at all. So that was a big learning curve. And it was a bit of a wake-up call. Listen to your intuition. Don't, allow your ego to take over. And today I have a very different relationship with my intuition. I do listen to it. And when I get those feelings, I do spend time thinking about it, taking a moment, thinking what's going on, what's spirit trying to communicate to me here, what do I feel, what do I sense, and I've had those experiences where I have learned to deeply trust it. And I've had experiences where I've driven up to a house and before setting foot in it and actually even seeing the inside, I felt I'm going to live there. That's the right place. And that's happened a number of times where I've literally driven up, sat outside and gone, yep, that's the one. That feels right, and then the estate agents turned up and showed me round, and it's just been kind of perfunctory because I've already felt it's right. I've already sensed it. There's something about the energy of the place, an instinctive feeling, stuff that, you can't really explain, but you just know. And so, yeah, I've had that experience. I've also had the experience as well where I've seen a job advert and known that I would get the job before I've even, physically applied. And that's also been quite interesting. But an important note here, you have to put the effort into it. These things don't magically happen. I still had to apply for it. I still had to work for it. I had to make sure that I had my facts right before going into the interview, for example. But, when I put the effort in, I had found myself where I was offered the job. So, I do trust it, and I do, I often make decisions now based on my intuition and based on those everyday things. Now that's some time ago. I haven't worked for a while due to my health. I'm, trying to make changes. There are things afoot. I've got my artwork now on exhibition, and I want to proactively make changes, but it's been, it's not a black and white journey, and it's not been very straightforward. But today I use my intuition in all kinds of ways. So sometimes it might be with my tarot cards. I'll just ask to be guided to the right card and pick the message that I need for that day. With my tarot cards, actually, I tend to just pick one or two of them, because I find if I pick lots of them and do a more complex reading, sometimes I get a bit lost in all the meanings and all the messages. So I find it easier to just, pick one card and say, what do I need for today? And, just intuitively pick one. And sometimes, it might be really daft things like where I've parked the car, for example. So I might park the car in a what looks like a perfectly sensible parking space, you know, but I just get that feeling it just doesn't feel right, and it's like a negative energy that it seems to have around it, so I'll move the car. You know, you know, I've no logical reason for moving the car, but I just follow my intuition these days. And at the moment, I'm actually wishing to make an alteration to my home, but I need my landlord's permission, and it's one of those things where my intuition says, just pause. I need to take my time about how I go about doing this, and find the best approach, gather my evidence, really, because my intuition feels that it will be rejected. So I'm just kind of going, okay, let's just pause, let's gather my evidence, let's think about how best to go about this. So we'll see. But you will notice that for me, when I'm speaking about my own intuition, that it's very much based on feelings, you know, and some people might have images coming to their mind's eye. Intuition's different for different people. You know, some people it might be words that come into their head, but for me it's very much a feelings-based thing. You know, it's a physical response that I'll have in my body, and I've learned not to ignore it, and to trust it and listen to it, really. So I hope you find this video useful. Please let me know any thoughts or comments, and like and subscribe, and I will be back in a few weeks' time. So enjoy your witchy craft and hope to see you soon.